Right, everybody, welcome to the Ensuring Community Benefit from Trails discussion. This is sort of like a focus group where everyone's invited, and this is a part of the Parkersburg to Pittsburgh Regional Master Plan project, and we're on the early end of the project and really greatly appreciate your time today and the feedback that you're going to share with us. What I'm going to do now is run through some slides. Those of you that are on the team, you've seen these already, but for everybody else, we want to make sure that you understand the project, and then we will roll into some discussion around how to ensure community benefit from trails. So let me just go ahead and grab my slides and get into slideshow mode. Okay, you should be seeing my initial slide. So again, this is for the Parkersburg to Pittsburgh corridor, and this is the second session. The first one was just a fun little kickoff that we did the other night, but this is the first one that's, really topical. And, as you can see, we'll have another 5 sessions throughout the month. You are welcome to any of them. And we would appreciate you helping us to spread the word about these. And I will make sure that you have a flyer and some more information. And we also will be in the communities later in the spring. In April and May, we're going to be getting out to the various counties. And if you have events you want us to come to and talk about this effort, we're receptive to that as well. So that's just a little bit about how we are engaging now and throughout the project. But for anyone that is just getting to know the P2P, it's a corridor that connects Parkersburg, West Virginia to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's currently about 80% complete. And whenever it's entirely complete, we're looking at almost 240 miles of trail. And it's 8 different trails together that are connected to each other and build as the P2P trail corridor. So that's the trail system. The reason we are gathered now is that the National Road Heritage Corridor received an ARC Arise planning grant along with the partners that you see listed here on this slide. And so that ARC grant, along with matching funds from the Just Transition Fund, the Bennington Foundation, and the City of Fairmont, make it possible for these partners to work together to create a regional master plan for the P2P Trail Corridor. I'm Amy Camp, if I didn't mention that already, and my company, Cycle Forward, was selected to work with the partners to produce this master plan. This builds on past successes. Some of you may be familiar with a couple of the reports that we have noted here. You may also be familiar with the Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition and all of the corridor level collaboration that's been occurring for like the past 15 plus years. That's only through IHTC, and there's been cooperation across state lines for many years before that as well. So we are building upon past successes with this work, and the purpose of the master plan is to develop a community-based implementation plan that will unlock the community and economic development potential of the P2P Trail Corridor. If Kent Spellman were in the room with us today, he would mention that the economic development that was hoped for along some parts of the P2P corridor hasn't materialized, and the partners recognize that, and that's why they are working together to really think about what's necessary to improve this region through trails. These are the goals that the partners brought into the project. I do think it's worth sharing them with you. First is to integrate trail infrastructure with inclusive economic strategies. Secondly is to produce actionable recommendations for investment, for workforce development, marketing, and managing success over time. The group also hopes to lead equitable community development or community engagement that ensures that historically underserved communities can shape and benefit from the outcomes. And finally, they see the P2P as a national model for recreation-based economic development. And so that's sort of like the look into the future of what is hoped for with this corridor through planning. This is just gives you a visual of those goals as related to some of the more general objectives and how they connect to our project values. And the way we are leading this work is we believe that everybody who interacts with us is deserving of respect and dignity, no matter what their thoughts are on trails. We are working to center communities in this work. The third one requires a little bit of explanation, but as a team, there's a certain acceptance of not knowing. We are here together as a community of learners and working to look for the answers that make sense for this region. And of course, regional collaboration is one of our key project values as well. So all of that leads to, well, how are we doing the work? This is Cycle Forward's approach to creating the master plan, a whole lot of community and stakeholder engagement, working to understand the market from an economic standpoint, from a marketing and tourism standpoint, and developing strategies that respond to that. And there's a major piece of the project has to do with physical infrastructure, understanding the infrastructure along the trails. We've already biked about 80% of the trails and did a detailed inventory. We're working on asset mapping so we understand the on and off trail assets. And we will be looking at, creating a downtown connectivity toolkit so that we know what exists and then how can we help communities to improve those physical connections. And then finally, we are looking at implementation. Again, how do you make this work over time? How do you continue to connect the trails to each other and work toward that national model that I mentioned a couple of slides ago? So that's a snapshot of the work. I'm going to pause for a moment and ask, what questions do you have so far, if you do have questions? Or for team members, what would you add?
Hey, Amy, I'm curious about something you said, and I don't know all the history, so this may just be filling in my gaps, but you mentioned that part of this is in response to funding in some areas not materializing. So was there a previous kind of plan in place for this, or is this like kind of a new vision for this Parkersburg to Pittsburgh? Like I'm just kind of wondering about the history of it. Was there a previous like articulated, we're gonna do a trail Pittsburgh to Parkersburg, and then some folks who said they were going to fund it didn't show up, or is this sort of like new to the scene?
Yeah, that's a great question. The point in history where I'm going to start to answer your question is maybe about 12 years ago, whenever the Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition came together. And that's a four-state, something like 1,500-mile envisioned network of corridors, of long-distance corridors like the P2P. The P2P is one of several. And that work of trying to take the coalition approach to completing and connecting trails has been happening since that time. There have been there hasn't been a master plan for the P2P. There is a connectivity study or a feasibility study that was really heavily focused on physically completing some of the gaps. That was done, I think, in 2018. But this is the first time there's a master plan for the full corridor. Any kind of planning studies would be for the specific trails. Like Ella could point you in the direction of studies for her trails, for example.
Okay, that's helpful. That's what I thought, and it is certainly exciting, but it makes sense that the um, the gaps have been on the specific projects.
Yeah, and this master planning process is less about trail completion. The partners have said to me, yeah, we know what we need to do to complete the trails, like where the trails aren't complete. We need to be working to plan for prosperity and how to leverage the trail. So that's really more of the focus for this plan. But yeah, great question, Nathan. Anything else?
And with that, like when I mean that framework makes sense that it's not we're not creating this giant plan just to help push the completion of sections, but I have to imagine that's one of the hoped for outcomes, right? Is to build momentum and maybe make it easier for them to find funding or gain momentum back.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I don't know if any of the partners that were at the table before I was that might be maybe like an unstated goal.
Sure.
Would that be fair to say, Brian or Ella or Steve?
I defer to Ella and her longevity.
Well, yeah, so I think, right, I think it certainly helps to grow the community and grow the stakeholders around it. We've often talked about the chicken and the egg of how do you keep trail users coming back to the completed sections and engaged, you know, when you don't have the businesses supporting or the assets along them. Like, I will just give you an example of several trails that I think some of you have been on, North Bend Rail Trail and like maybe even the West Fork Rail Trail as examples where you've seen the trails have existed for quite a while in the shape that they're in, and quite, at least 20 mile, with North Bend being 70 some miles. But even with that, you're not seeing the communities kind of engaged or thriving from that. And there have been fits and starts of trying to, as in solo ways with nonprofits or foundations or county support trying to engage that business component, but that's been lacking. And then so from that lack, from that void, there's also the challenge of then, oh, well, how do we keep the investment going into the trail itself if you're not seeing the trail use or the business engagement? So yeah, I think infrastructure is certainly key. We do want to see the whole thing fixed and connected and not fixed, but connected and 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 so that's going to continuously happen while we're doing this other effort. Um, and we do have a lot of momentum happening now, especially around the sheepskin and Fairmont.
Hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Ella. And then of course, I think the corridor is fortunate to have the Great Allegheny Passage on the northern end as a really nice example of some of the possibilities that come along with trails from an economic and business development standpoint. So I just want to note that as well. We have varying levels of impact that have occurred along the P2P corridor.
Mhm.
I wanted to share a couple more slides, or I should say a few. Don't want to dwell on this too much, but I want to make sure everyone knows that we have a month-long celebration happening right now called Heart Trails Month. This is early community engagement. It is hard to do community engagement in February. So we decided to just create a fun event that's a blend of virtual indoor and outdoor programs to get people thinking about and celebrating trails and providing some information to us in the meantime. Ella, I'm not going to make you read this again today, but we have love letters to trails is one of the things that you can find at p2ptrails.org. You can just go into a simple web form, and it's like really will be like the sweetest 5 minutes of your day, I think, unless you're petting your dog or something that wins or cat. That's one of the things you could do that's really easy and fun. You can follow along on Facebook and Instagram and, on the website. We have a newsletter you can sign up for. And then, of course, we have the events and programs. So this just gives you a visual of a few of the programs that are taking place over the next week or so. Lots of fun possibilities. I think we have close to 2 dozen events and programs at p2ptrails.org. And, if you know of other things that are happening in your communities along your trails that are trail related, um, fill out the form and we will get it added to the events calendar. And this, like I mentioned, is the second out of 7 different virtual engagements, focus group style discussions. So I'll make sure that you have this information, but this is the full calendar for that. So what I want to do is go into discussion, and I'd like to start by having you complete a couple of polls. So I'm going to launch the first poll. And the question is, what do you hope for when it comes to trails? And I'm going to force you into a choice. Take your time and look at the options. What do you most hope for when it comes to trails?
Oh. Amy, can we choose more than one?
No, you have to choose your top choice.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you.
Sorry, Steve.
All right.
I am not seeing anything. Am I supposed to be seeing a different screen?
Interesting. Is everybody else seeing it?
I think
So,
Yes.
you have
yeah.
to pull up your screen or something.
Hmm.
Are you on your phone or on the computer?
No, I'm on a PC.
That's you, Pete, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh, that's interesting. Um, I apologize. I don't know how to troubleshoot that and in the moment, but hopefully whenever I close the poll, which I am about to do, and I want to make sure that I have record of this poll. Uh, let's see. So our top result, and I know we're a small group, but this will get accumulated over time from meeting to meeting, including our in-person meetings. The top choices were a more connected community as the thing you were most hoping for, followed by business growth and job opportunities, and a place to recreate and socialize. So thank you for taking the time there. There are the results. I should have shared those already with you.
Oh,
You seeing that now, Pete?
I am not seeing anything. No, I clicked on OK at the top of the screen where it was saying it was being recorded, and I thought maybe that would fix it, but it did not.
Did you see my slides before, just out of
Yeah,
curiosity?
your slides are fine. I could definitely see your slides when you put them up, but I'm not seeing the quizzes. I've certainly seen those in other presentations, so I'm not sure why I'm not seeing them.
Okay. Um, Hmm. Well, yeah, not quite sure about that. But I have one more poll. Let's see if you can see this one.
Okay.
So the first question had to do with, what are your hopes? This one has to do with how do we get there? So again, take your time looking through the possibilities.
Oh, there we go.
what does choice 6 mean?
I think that's just a mistake on my part, but I was also realizing that I did want to include something about activating trails with programs, like bringing trails to life with activities. So if that appeals to you, hit choice 6. I'll make sure it's reflected.
Oh,
I turned my view on and off, and suddenly it worked. So
Oh, great. That'll be helpful for
yeah.
the next meeting, possibly. Okay, super. I'm going to end the poll.
Oh, wait,
But
wait.
4 out of 6 of you
I
said
didn't.
that engaging and involving local people and businesses is the top way to achieve the hopes that you hold for trails. So that's very helpful. Thank you. Let's make sure that you have a chance to see those. One vote for economic development. I feel like that should say business and economic development, and one for improving trail-related infrastructure and amenities. All right, super. Thanks. So with that, it's discussion time, and I do have some questions for you, but we'll just sort of see where this goes. Um, first question is, what brought you here today? What brought you to a session titled Ensuring Community Benefit from Trails?
Well, I'm a cycle tourist, and I like destination trails that I can ride on for 2 or more days. And after riding the North Bend Rail Trail, I enjoyed it very much. But I did notice that it really is better for people who are on either a cycle or a gravel bike or a mountain bike. You really need wider tires to negotiate it. And I was camping, and it was fine. I was fortunate in that I did a little research ahead of time, and I found the Doddridge campground in addition to the state park campground. So I was able to find places to stay, but I didn't feel like all of that information was readily available to me out there when I went looking to set up that ride. And I found YouTube videos of people that had ridden it. That was probably the most helpful thing that I found, in addition to what I could find on websites related to the trail.
So you
So
really could have benefited from a central resource.
a little bit more detailed central resource, with a little bit more of the, nearby infrastructure would have been helpful. Maybe a little more detail on what's in some of the trail towns, because I think there's more there than we were aware of. We didn't necessarily get off and explore some of those towns very, very much. Um, and I would wonder if improving the surface on that trail would get more people there, because while I was fine riding on the coarser gravel, I think if you were on narrower tires, and I don't mean skinny tires, I mean just like 35s, you're going to have a harder time riding that trail than if you were on mountain bike tires or gravel tires, something like that. So one of the things I like about trails like the Gap and the C&O, and most recently visiting the Ghost Town Trail repeatedly, up in Pennsylvania. Those trails all have good surfaces, and they may be a little hilly, and the trail may be a little rutted out in places, but for the most part, you can ride those on almost any kind of a bike. And so I
Yeah.
think they get more traffic perhaps because of that.
Yeah.
Certainly
Yeah,
better
good.
reviews, which gets more traffic, right? So, um, I just a quick note on that because I don't think it's total focus, but in May I'm meeting up with the superintendent and others to try to talk to them about a new feasible, surfacing plan and a lot of issues with drainage on that trail as well. So trying to figure out at least a phased approach for improving sections and dealing with some of the problem areas. So so we recognize we have some problems even on the completed sections
But it's a
of
great trail. I enjoyed it. It was
yeah, it's
wonderful.
interesting to have a rail trail that goes not next to a river or a creek that you're cutting through so many of the mountains
Yeah,
and
a lot of
instead of
tunnels, and
like,
it was a surprising amount of up and down. It's all rail grade or less, but it was a surprising amount of up and down travel. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Good. Thanks. What do others think? Like what made this worth your time here to be here thinking about community benefits?
Oh, I guess I'll just say I made it because I realized I missed the first call, and I wasn't really thinking so much about the title of the session, but that I just felt like I should maybe plug in.
Mm, good. Thank you. It's always good to have Peggy plugged in.
I've been unplugged for quite a while, and I might still be unplugged. I don't know. I got lots going.
Are you all feeling hopeful that the communities along the P2P can benefit from the various trails? Or are you feeling concerned? Nathan, I saw you come off. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was actually going to respond to your last query, but I'll tackle both. So I mean, for me, this is just, I mean, this is the kind of project that WVU as a land grant should be behind, and seeing how it can further that. But as you know, sort of one of the key parts of the university that engages the outdoor infrastructure for the benefit of our students, like I think it's important for myself and my colleagues to stay in the loop and look for those connections. And in terms of hopefulness, I mean, I think so. You know, there, like Ryan can tell you from the OEDC lens, there's lots of good evidence that, you know, that this is a growing awareness in the state that investing in outdoor infrastructure actually returns an economic benefit and a wellness benefit. And so it makes, you know, I'm hopeful, but you know, realistic too about how long things take. You know, it just takes time. And so it's a cautious optimism, because I would love to plan to take students from Parkersburg to Pittsburgh next year on a bike ride. And, you know, I got to wait until it's there, you know, until those things exist. So it's like a little bit of impatient optimism, if you will. But and then I've also just got to say, I've got to bounce to get to the next thing, but I will continue to stay plugged into the conversation and look forward to supporting as I can.
Thank you so much,
Nice to
Nathan.
meet you,
Yeah,
Nathan.
thanks, Nathan.
Yeah.
I'm here because I recognize that on the Gap, most of our communities seem to be well embraced by local folks, but there are a couple towns that are purportedly trail town spaces where there just isn't local buy-in, and I think our tourists feel that. And so it concerns me with my role here that those towns may not be as welcoming and thoughtful for tourists. But big picture, Amy, you once noted, and it's a central theme of your book, that our tourism assets need to be assets for local folks first and then for tourists. And that's such a great and thoughtful reminder. And
Mhm.
it's part of the lay of the land here that if our trails and our forests and our streams are valued by local folks, then we've got this anchor point that we can't get just with tourists. So I wanted to hear what others had to say, and I'm glad to meet folks like Pete and Ryan and Peggy.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for reminding of that us of that. I mean, I think so often that we think about community benefit, we go right to the dollar signs, which is important and needed. And also, there are so many different ways that communities benefit from trails, and we have to remember that. Like, if we're exploring ensuring community benefit, we have to, I think, be thoughtful about, well, what does that mean? Does that resonate with anybody?
Yeah, I'll just chime in real quick. I think as far as the community buy-in goes to, we have a saying in our department: tourism is the red carpet to residency, and residency is one of the biggest issues facing, West Virginia and a little bit for, the majority of southwestern Pennsylvania as well. If we don't have new people coming in, our towns are going to die. So it doesn't matter, if that trail exists or not. These are super, super important, and we are ensuring a very sustainable way to make sure that our communities are available for future generations. If your grandkids or great grandkids want to stay in that town and you want them to stay there, this could be the driver that allows them to do that, and especially in our region where it's been traditional extractive resources. And then once that extractive resource goes poof, what are we left with? A shell of a town of once was. And this could be our new way of maybe not building to what was, but a way to sustain what is and maybe grow it very steadily over time. So yeah, it really resonates with me as far as community benefits and what these trails could offer folks, whether that's a small bed and breakfast, could be a coffee shop, could be a bike repair shop along the trail. Those are all great ways to keep the community alive and growing.
Yeah, great thoughts, Ryan. Yeah, and just the businesses you just named, like it's a living, like these people that can make a living. The red carpet to residency, I love that. And I also heard in your remarks, just bringing people back, bringing people in, because there are places to recreate as well. I was working on another project a couple of years ago. Those of you that might know the unlocking report that we did for the IHTC, and there was discussion around outside investors coming in, seeing the opportunity in the outdoor economy, being able to invest in a property or a business, and they're sort of like the early adopters in certain rural places, and they're the ones that reap the benefits as compared to long-standing residents. I think it's great that those people come and do that work, but also it's an um, interesting topic to me. That one of the things that came out of that project was trying to ensure that people who already live in rural communities, and any communities along the P2P, have the chance to experience the same benefits. Does anyone want to respond to that?
Well, I think in Morgantown we had some first adopter businesses, and they ended up having to fold because they were there before the trail was done.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Lacoste moved to the waterfront.
Mm.
Yeah.
It was tough. It.
I think I was one of the few customers, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I feel that. So I think that's that chicken and the egg that we were talking about before of like having the infrastructure ready for that economic component and being a trustworthy partner with the business who's trying to get going. Because, I again, I'm not, that's not my world of trying to run a business, and I'm sure it's a struggle, and I don't know what the state and the counties and what these resources are to offer them to help them through and sustain them through the good and bad of that. And so, that's some of the questions, some of the things that brings me to the room is just trying to see how others have navigated that, um, and what is it that we need to just give that little extra push or that little extra support system that's going to encourage somebody to start, or to engage or to become part of the business infrastructure. Um, and that's not necessarily all like the recreation based restaurant kind of thing. I also, or bike shop. I kind of want to think a little bigger on like, well, are we talking to our quarries and the fact that what makes the trail itself, or the equipment operators, or the sign companies that we want to see invest in wayfinding, or the makers, right? You see like, how do we brand something that suddenly gathers some kind of inspiration and momentum around like, oh, I want to like have that recognition connection to that trail system through creative product, whether that's music or the art, all kinds of stuff, right? So, um, and I think there's a lot of those groups um, that also are like, you know, where am I going to find my next festival or community engagement, event that's going to sell my creativity, my photographs. So I think going back to that question of like locally driven, right? Like, are we hiring local photographers to document what's happening on trails? Or are we, engaging with local companies to try to see where we can come up with, um, a better wayfinding system? Or, and those, and so we don't often talk about, I guess, some of those groups when we're talking about the businesses that are popping up, but I think they're just as much a part of that community.
Yeah, good. It's good to broaden the way we're thinking about who's benefiting. Yeah. And I think I like just to connect like your early comments to a part of what I was saying is, it's just like how do we create the support system that can make it possible that local people without deep pockets can start and sustain a business. There are examples out there of the right sorts of supports, and I think what we're trying to do here in part is figuring out what supports will work here in this region. Um, and you talked about the makers. The makers makes me think of Made by Mountains in Western North Carolina. They're celebrating the makers. So again, not to just like copy and paste from other places, but what can we do here to really leverage trails? Brian, were you going to say something?
Well, I had a question for either Pete in Portage or the West Virginia folks. In Somerset, Fayette, and Westmoreland counties here in Pennsylvania, the public have approved a hotel tax on that's mostly affecting tourists, right? 5% or whatever it is for every overnight, and most of those dollars go back into the county coffers, but some of them are made available for businesses or nonprofits for competitive tourism grants for like a facade improvement or a visitor center or for marketing work to market your B&B or market your bike shop. Do your areas have that tool in place? And I mean, they were hard sells in conservative southwestern PA, and I imagine there are hard sells everywhere. But is that is that one tool in your toolkits in your areas?
Ella can talk about the good success with the, what do you call it? The tax, property tax?
Yeah, so we have a Parks and Trails levy that's been the most successful thing for um, putting money back into the trail infrastructure, the maintenance and the upkeep of the trails. We didn't have a secure system for that, and that's a little different. It's not going to the businesses or like what you're suggesting of like loans or
But
infrastructure, but it is
it's
an
sort of a
investment that
proxy of community investment and
right.
involvement.
And that gets voted on every 4 years to renew it. And you do need to get 60% of the vote yes on it. So what has to happen, I think, for that to pass in communities is for there to already be a strong trail user group and a strong community that's going to pass it. So if you tried to start that in a community that the trail wasn't in good shape, right? Like going back to, say, North Bend, where you have a rough surface or you have issues, and you're trying to get those folks to recognize the value, it'd be a harder sell. It has to come kind of like to the mature trail. But circling, and I'm not sure I can answer that other question that you had about hotel. We do have hotel tax that goes towards tourism. Steve might be better at answering, but that does go, there is a percentage on the hotel taxes. It goes to our convention and visitors bureaus
Mhm.
and our some of our, like, I think some of our parks, city and county parks might get a cut of that. It doesn't necessarily do what you're suggesting that I'm aware of, like where we're offering a business support or a branding or a marketing effort that they can connect to. I think the CVB does do some of that work, right? But whether it's like directly connected to, you're going to get some money from this tax, I'm not sure. Um, so it would be an interesting one to look at to see, how yours are different than ours are.
Yep. Portage County also has a well-developed support system through levies. Like when Steve was up here, it might have just been the one park. It might have just been Towner's Woods. And they had one employee, one full-time employee who was the director, and I had one or two part-time employees. And we've been passing levies for the last 10 or so years, 10, 15 years. And we now have a whole bunch of parks. I have 18 trail counters that I monitor. So we had one trail probably back in the day.
Mhm.
Um, and there is the capability, I think, of the park providing grant money from their own funds. They have little grants that they can provide to people that are trying to do things in the community. None of our trails are very long right now. They are gradually connecting to other trails. So they haven't really become a tourist destination at this point, although I could see that happening. And one of the things I've been wanting to see is connecting to the Ohio to Erie Trail, which, a lot of you are probably familiar with. Um, you can go from Akron pretty much all the way to where I live, which is 15 miles away on trail. And then there are quiet road connections that allow you to go all the way up to Ashtabula on the Western Reserve Greenway. So I think that could become a future tourist destination, but there is not infrastructure along those trails yet, other than towns that pre-existed that are benefiting from the trails. But like I say, it's just not a destination yet.
Yeah, it's challenging because I think a lot of the folks that will show up at these public engagement sessions are already supporters and trail stakeholders. So, we believe in the transformational potential of trails, but I guess my biggest hope for this strategic planning process is that trails be more widely accepted as an economic asset because even in the Morgantown area where we have a pretty vital trail program and connections, but Ella still has a hard time keeping a bathroom open along the trail and Amy, I know you've talked to the CVB, but they still think that this is that it's local people and that they aren't sold yet that this is a regional economic asset. So anything we can do through this project to convince the powers that be, the economic authorities at all levels that trails, have potential to be an economic asset will go a long way to helping us accomplish our goals.
We're going to do our very best, Steve.
Yeah.
The e- so I think I hear some solutions. I'm hearing challenges, I'm hearing solutions throughout this discussion, but we've talked about levies, we've talked about hotel taxes, I mentioned the Made by Mountains program. Are there other solutions or programs that you want like our team to be aware of and researching as we're thinking about what can work regionally? We have to put together an economic development strategy, a marketing strategy, an investment strategy, bring all of these things together. Are there programs either in region or from other places that you want us to know about? And you can either respond or use the chat or follow up with me.
Well, I'll just say a couple things. One, as far as the quality of the trail surface and maintenance, that is, I think, and I've been unplugged for a while, but I think at our state level, where the grants come from, the state highway department really has their own view of what a trail should look like. And I'm not so sure they're totally bought into the idea that it should be crusher run, smooth like the Great Allegheny Passage. I think
So
they're starting to come around, right, Ella?
they are. So I just got them to recognize the surface that we have on the Mon River trails as a usable trail surface, and it's a slow learning curve. But yeah, we are starting to move that needle on what does the rail trail surface feel like, and and that's what, like I said, that's going to be some of the lessons that we're taking to the Allegheny Highlands Trail and the North Bend Rail Trail. And I've been giving out a traveling show of buckets of limestone sand. Literally, like driving it around the state, and getting people out to be on the trail that we have here to feel what that's like. And so I hope that can shift. But yeah, you're right. Like if you don't have the state there with you and they're giving out the money and building a lot of it, and
Well,
it's
that's it. They're not just giving the money; they have their own specs. Yeah,
right, they have their own specs, right?
that they want, and they have their own contractors that you have to
That's
choose from, and there's contractors are using those specs, and it's like whoa, 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 not quite right. Even as far as even bollards, how high the bollards are and how
mhm.
apart, and then all of a sudden a bicycle with a pulling a kid trailer or a camping trailer or something can't make it through, or a three-wheeler bike, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
these
this
are the
is
things I wrestle with at 3 a.m.
mhm.
And I will say that I do think that one of our strategies, I'm going to throw this out as a strategy that I came up with it. So it may not be good because it came up at 2 a.m. It's like, maybe we need to have more of the engineers in the room because it's the DOH that listens, our highways listens to the engineers that they hire. If you have the engineers hired, like selling you something different, that's who they're going to recognize as the professional.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we don't, I mean, it's funny how our conferences are packed with engineers, but are they actually handing out the designs that we want them to is another story. I almost think we should have just that. And we do have a transportation planning conference in Morgantown this spring, so that's hopeful. But I don't want to, I'm sorry, we're
No, that's
off
helpful.
track.
That's helpful. No, it's helpful. Ryan?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think as far as a selling point for this too, especially like a regional based one is our downtown revitalizations. I don't think people quite realize what a trail system, a simple trail system can do for revitalizing your downtowns and getting your smaller mom and pop shops back and operational. I think a great case study that we could show to people, and like you said earlier, I don't want to just copy and paste. But if you can show that over time, this is a great way to generate sustainable economic stability for towns, is Greenville, South Carolina. Like
Mm,
the amount of people that are migrating there simply because they have a very walkable, bikeable infrastructure that wasn't there originally. I mean, they tore down a perfectly good highway bridge, and people were angry about that, and now they have a beautiful pedestrian bridge that walks right over their waterfall that they love to show off so well. And I just see so many opportunities with our downtowns that could easily half the time go right through, or the rail trails go right through those downtowns, and building that infrastructure that allows bikers to get off the trail and explore those areas. I think that could be a huge driving factor towards us gaining support in this, especially with, county commissioners, local city municipals, and even at our state legislators, and hopefully we can one day just maybe take them all out on the trail and be like, this is why this is important. Do you feel it? I hope you do, enjoy it, because this is a special asset that is hard to replicate, and in the business world, that is exactly what you want. You want a great product that is hard to replicate, that people want. And we have it. We have it, that you can't replicate a mountain and a river and a flat 1% trail service that goes all the way through there. That's so hard to do, and we have it in mass quantities, and no one else does.
Appreciate
Yeah.
that. That's
Oh,
great.
that's so great.
Yeah.
So I want to acknowledge it's just after 5. If anyone has to hop off, I won't be offended, but I am going to take time to um, see what Pete has to say and sort of like bring us home in the next few minutes here. So um, if you have to go right now, thank you. Pete, what is it that you wanted to say?
I don't know what mechanisms are in place to accomplish this, but I have noticed that on every rail trail I've been on, there are either abandoned buildings or buildings that need a lot of love that are located along those structures. And I'm wondering if there are methods, or I don't know, is there something in place out there that will allow communities to buy these structures and make them available for small businesses to get started? Because you see, they're either old train stations or old, uh, country stores that are, the buildings still exist, but they're in rough shape. And I would think those would be great places to start businesses.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Pete, and something we can look into. There are definitely groups out there that deal with like strategies for vacant properties, and we will take a look at that.
I think
Yeah.
it's called the Bad Buildings Program, right? And
Oh,
it
okay.
stands for something like build abandoned development or something. I don't think it
Okay.
stands for bad buildings, but we do have a program in West Virginia. But so much of that challenge is like tracking the property ownership and finding why it's, whether like why it's there's like one owner of like half a block of Point Marion, Pennsylvania, and unwilling to sell anything or do anything and feel like it's an inheritance for his children who live on the other side of the country or whatever. Like you just hear the stories get repeated of why you have like empty storefronts, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with not having interested people who would want to start a business. It's not having control of the properties more than anything.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I don't know for that for sure, but that's
Yeah.
part of your
Sometimes.
business
Sometimes.
strategy,
Mhm.
your exploration on that. But yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Steve, we lost you again.
No, we can't hear you again.
You can either use the chat or send me a note if you want to be able to share. Okay. So hey, thank you for a really invigorating, useful conversation. I learned a lot today. We will be using this conversation. We will be making it available to others, and we will continue the work, of course, over the next many months. So I hope you can stay looped in, be involved in Heart Trails Month, and then we'll be out somewhere near you this spring, sort of midway in the project. And thanks for making the time today.
All right.
Thanks for gathering
You
us, Amy.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
you bet. Have a good
Take care,
evening,
everybody.
everyone.
too.